Introducing the remarkable archetype, the dangerous gentleman. With a demeanor that commands respect and a hint of potency, he embodies strength tempered by virtue. Though his capabilities could veer towards danger, he channels his power for noble causes, serving others and safeguarding those in need. Rooted in a profound love for both God and humanity, he navigates life with discipline and purpose. In his presence, one witnesses the harmonious blend of power and benevolence, a testament to the true essence of masculinity. Step into the world of the dangerous gentleman, where strength is wielded for righteousness, and discover a captivating embodiment of honor and valor. Greetings and welcome to Storytime with the Dangerous Gentleman. Yes, I am the Dangerous Gentleman. No, I did not give myself that nickname, but I certainly did earn it. So today we're going to talk a bit about mental health. And just a little disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional, but I have learned a few things over the course of my life about mental health. I'm going to be talking from personal, not professional experience. So if you want to try some of these things that I talk about, cool, but I'm not going to tell you to take or not take mental health drugs. So let me start back in 2016. My life was falling apart. I had lost my kids. My wife had told me she wanted a divorce, and I really had no hope. And I really didn't have any of the skills or mindset or mentality of how to take care of myself and my own mental health. I was coping with all kinds of things, right? I was using all kinds of bad coping mechanisms. And I felt miserable. I wasn't sleeping. I was sad all the time. I just didn't know how to handle it. And so I went to the doctor and I got prescribed anti-anxiety pills. I got prescribed sleeping pills because I wasn't sleeping. And none of this stuff was helping. My solution was to go back to the doctor and talk more about it. And her solution was to give me another drug. Oh, I'm still sad. Okay, here's another. Try this antidepressant. Try this sleeping pill. Try this thing. I was even on a mild dose of antipsychotic medication. So I really didn't have to face the pain and the difficulties and all the crap that I was facing in my life. I didn't have to actually face it. I wanted to try to just fix it with a pill. If you know anything about my history, though, generally speaking, up until that point, I wasn't a big fan of the pharmaceutical industry. I wasn't a big fan of drugs really of any kind because most drugs just cover up a symptom that lifestyle can fix, right? Being in the chiropractic profession, I tried to use herbs. I tried to use natural things to help. Well, I stopped leaning on that stuff. I stopped looking at that kind of stuff when my own personal life was falling apart. So I started to get on all of these drugs, 2 or 3 different antidepressants and a bipolar medication, like I said, an antipsychotic, an anti-anxiety, a sleeping pill. So I was taking usually anywhere from 4 to 6 pills a day. And I would fall asleep at night. I'd fall asleep for a few hours and then I'd wake up and I wouldn't be able to sleep. I'd have this constant, almost like a gnawing pain, just gross, sour stomach most of the time. Probably 80 to 90% of the time, I just had this sour, didn't matter what I ate, didn't matter what I drank, didn't matter what I was doing. I just had this sour feeling in the pit of my stomach, which didn't help with the sleep at all. And it really wasn't helping my mood either. And so I just kept going and getting more prescriptions. And that's one of the faults of the medical profession and how medical professionals tend to treat mental health. And I'm not faulting them. That's the tool they have in their tool bag. There's a saying that I learned a long time ago. When the only tool you have in your tool bag is a hammer, every problem is a nail. So the way that applies to the medical profession is when the only tool in your tool bag is drugs, then every problem is pharmaceutical. And I just was not doing well. I was not coping well. I was not really talking about my problems. I wasn't really getting those things out on the table, which is a much more helpful way to deal with things. Is it the only way? No. Are drugs the only way? No. Are they a way? Well, they can be. I think they are way overprescribed, but I'm not going to tell you to stop taking them because that's not my job. My job is to tell you my personal experience. That's why we call it story time. So over time, my mental health wasn't getting any better and my physical health was deteriorating. I was sleeping less and less. I had less and less energy and I just was falling apart physically. And so I remember it all culminated one day when I stopped at my old house to talk to somebody. And all of a sudden, I could not talk very well. I was slurring my words. I was stuttering. I was having involuntary tremors in my hands. And this person, like, I didn't notice them until this person that I was talking to, they're like, Andrew, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And they're like, well, you're slurring your word and you're stuttering and stuff like that. I was like, I started to pay attention and I absolutely was. So on my way home, part of me was just like, I'm just going to go home and sleep it off or whatever. On my way home, I was like, yeah, no, this is not good. So I stopped by the clinic. I stopped by my doctor's office and she took a look at me and she's like, yeah, you're not okay. By that time, I was starting to have like my legs were like I was having involuntary muscle twitches in my legs. And so, like, if I weren't thinking about it, my arms would start to move without me paying attention and my legs would start to move. And she's like, no, you're not okay. I'm going to call an ambulance because I don't even know if it's safe for you to drive. And so she called an ambulance and the ambulance came and I'm having all these symptoms like my blood pressure spiked. My speech was getting even worse. My muscle tremors were getting even worse. And so they took me to the hospital and they ran all kinds of scans and like an MRI and they were doing all these blood tests and stuff. And they got back to me and they said, well, like, there's nothing physically that we can find. Your brain looks okay. Like everything looks like it's okay, but like you still got these symptoms. And then only after all of that did they start to ask me about the medications I was on. And so I listed this big long list of nasty, or not nasty, this big long list of medications. And they're like, oh, well, you're on this and this. Well, those, when you take those two things together, it can cause the exact symptoms that you're having. And I was like, great. So not only am I taking all these drugs that are not good for me, generally speaking, they're actually having a negative. They weren't even, it wasn't that they just weren't helping. They were actually making me physically worse. And they said, stop taking this one medication and see how you do. So I stopped taking that medication. 3 days later, I was at work and I started to have similar symptoms. So this time I went to urgent care and they're like, yeah, it's probably just that still. So you're just going to have to give it a little bit of time. It took about a week to get all of that fully out of my system, but I was still taking all the other stuff. And it really, like, I wasn't getting better. I wasn't feeling any better. I was still feeling like crap. And it definitely wasn't helping my mood. And that's also about the same time that I started to abuse alcohol and other harder drugs. Lots of weed just to help me sleep. I would basically drink until I passed out and smoke some weed. And eventually it led to I was doing methamphetamines and I was doing heroin and I was just doing all of this stuff because I just wanted something to take away the emotional pain that I was feeling. And I didn't want to actually face it the way it needed to be faced. So I was trying to mask it in every way possible. So what I'm saying is like those drugs, while they may be helpful for a time, you really do have to you really do have to face that pain. Really do have to take on those challenges and look them in the eye and not just dig down deep. I mean, there's some benefit to digging into childhood trauma. No doubt. There's some benefit to that and getting to the root cause. But you also got to start putting in the work to fix your life, to change your life. Because if all you do is dig into that stuff and you never start to apply some other beneficial things, you're never actually going to get anywhere. You're just going to keep digging. You're going to just keep peeling layers off the onion. So I'm also a fan of getting some talk therapy. For most of my life, I had a negative stereotype of what talk therapy was. Like, oh, only people who are weak need counseling. Well, when I was going through all this stuff, this was a year or two before all the drugs, right? I was going to a psychologist. I court mandated. I had to. I had to go to him because it was court mandated. And all I can say is that I learned more from that guy than I have from anyone else in a given period of time. Like, he gave me so many helpful skills, so many things to help me, and things that I still apply to this day. And if I had been applying those things during that time later on, I probably wouldn't have been on all those drugs if I had just remembered what he had told me. And it was only when it's like, hey, my life is screwed up. And then I started to remember all the things that he told me. I started to apply the lessons that he taught me. And I was like, okay, things started to get better. But anyway, so 2016, I was still on several of these drugs. I got off one. I took a couple of blood tests and they said, hey, these are the ones that are good for you. And so I got on to some mental health drugs, and some of them, like, it was moderately helpful. But I was also starting to deal with and face some of those negative consequences, some of that pain. And it was shortly after this, then I was still on like 3 or 4 medications. And when I moved to Yakima, and I decided that I would just use up the prescriptions that I had and then not renew them now that I was here. And that's not the best way to do it. Like, you don't want to just quit that stuff cold turkey because it can have some very negative side effects to withdrawal symptoms. But I was sad and lonely, and rather than trying to mask that, I just wanted to get off that stuff so I could actually feel the pain that I needed to feel and start to actually do the work that I needed to do. And over time, it started to help. Honestly, the biggest thing that I started to do that helped with my mental health was to start walking a lot. And I've talked about that in a previous episode. And to go to the gym and to try to get my life back in order. I started to get up early. I started to hit the gym. I started to change what I was eating. I started to try to be a better version of myself. And yeah, I still did some talk therapy, but I was also going to church. I was also finding good quality friends. I was also working through the steps of Narcotics Anonymous and all of that stuff. And so I was able to wean myself off of those drugs pretty quickly. Like, again, not the healthiest way, but I pretty much quit them cold turkey. And I haven't taken a pharmaceutical drug now. That was in early 2017. So it's been 7+ years that I really haven't taken anything stronger than an ibuprofen when I've got some deep muscle aches. And then when I had gallstones, I took some more heavy duty painkillers, but only for a short period of time. So mental health, like, drugs are not the long-term answer. They're there to help you, sort of. Like, I'm not going to tell you to take them or to not take them. I'm not going to tell you to quit them if you're going to quit them. I'm not going to tell you that. But what I am going to tell you is that just a couple years ago, they released some scientific information. They released a long-term, very large, randomized placebo-controlled trial about the effects of pharmaceutical-grade antidepressants. And the conclusion that they came to was that the original study that was published like 30 years ago that touted SSRIs, which is the most common, it's SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And they blamed like serotonin levels on depression symptoms. And so I won't get into all the details, but what this new study revealed is that the original mechanism they thought was helping with those SSRIs wasn't really effective at all. It really wasn't doing what it said it was going to do. And even if it was, that's not really the answer anyway. And there's been all kinds of information that's come out now that diet, exercise, sunshine, those 3 things are more effective for a vast majority of the population than SSRIs. SSRIs have side effects. And it's actually kind of funny. Some of the biggest side effects of SSRIs, so these are things that are supposed to help you not be depressed. But some of the side effects are losing your hair, diminished sex drive, and weight gain. So you're already depressed. So now you're going to lose your hair and your desire for sex, and you're going to gain weight. I'm just not seeing how that's a good, healthy combination for someone who's trying to not be sad. I would rather be like, hey, go outside, get some sunshine, get a good night's sleep, eat a healthy diet, go to the gym and exercise. That way, you're losing weight, your sex drive is going to increase, and you're going to have all kinds of positive impacts on your body outside of just improving your mood. So, SSRIs and a lot of the other mental health drugs really have now been shown that the effect from them, any positive effect that they have, is because doctors and professionals tell them that they are going to work. So there's a placebo effect. But generally speaking, there's not really any scientific evidence that shows that they actually do what they say they do. And they cause much more negative long-term side effects, because at first they were meant to be used, all right, so we're going to put these on you for 6 months to a year. You're going to get some counseling. You're going to work on your life, and then we'll start to wean you off them. Well, then people started to they wouldn't put in that other work, and they would just stay on these antidepressants for years, decades in some cases. I've heard of people who were on them for decades, and they finally were just like, I got to get off of this. And then they had these horrible withdrawal symptoms. That's not the long-term answer. SSRIs and other mental health drugs, while they may be helpful, and again, I am not a mental health professional, I do happen to know a bit about it though. And I happen to know quite a bit about the human body and the human brain and how that all works. So I'm not going to tell you, I'm just going to keep saying this, I am not going to tell you to stop taking your mental health drugs or antidepressants. What I am going to tell you is that on top of that, while those are working, get outside, get some exercise, start eating better, and get plenty of sleep, and hang around with the right people. And those are going to have just as much of a positive effect, if not way more so positive effect on your mental health than any drug you will ever take. It's simple. Not easy, simple. And that's how I eventually got off of all those things. And now I'm out here, living my best life, because I decided to try to actually get healthy. And I started to face the pain, and I started to face the challenges rather than covering them up with a pill. Right? I do some talk therapy still every once in a while, and I still deal with all of those, some of that childhood trauma and some of those things, right? I'm not saying don't do that, but apply some practical steps. People want a quick fix. People want a miracle drug. And so the pharmaceutical industry is more than happy to try to give that to them. Guess what they do? They create patients for life. Because if the person fixes their life without the pharmaceutical drug, then that doctor and that pharmaceutical company no longer have a patient. They are no longer making money off of that person. They are not there to create health. They are there to prevent the worst kinds of sicknesses. They're not there to fix them. They're there to just kind of cover up the symptoms. And so my personal journey is a great example of that. I tried to go down that road. I tried to fix myself with all of these drugs. I tried to fix myself with the easy road, but it didn't help me in the long term. And the journey to get where I have gotten, living a great life with friends, the healthiest physically and mentally that I've ever been, has been so worth the journey. But I went down that dark road. Okay? You shouldn't be ashamed if you've gone down that dark road. Now is the opportunity. Get healthy. Fix the problems from the inside and the outside. Go to counseling, but also go to the gym. Also start to eat healthier. See your doctor, but also see your personal trainer. That's my story. And so I hope it helped you a little bit, and I'll talk to you next time. So if you like this content, please give it a rating, a review, and share it with your friends. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm all about and what I can maybe do for you, check out my website at thedangerousgentleman.org. That's thedangerousgentleman.org. Thank you for listening.